Syncretism and the Roman God Factory. Did the Romans create Jesus? Don't get your hopes up just yet, we won't be answering that question directly in this video. That's going to be discussed later. Today we're just going to be discussing the idea whether Rome did have the ability and desire to create gods through invention and syncretism. Today's video forms a small piece of a large jigsaw puzzle, which depicts the invention of Jesus. And yes, we are presupposing that the supernatural Jesus was invented because we are looking at this with a naturalist's lens, and as such, only interested in natural explanations for the Jesus story. So this video is a constituent part of a bigger jigsaw puzzle, which will eventually be revealed, explaining exactly why, when, and how Jesus was manufactured. And why are we looking at Rome specifically? That's because the Romans were in Judea at the time that the Jesus story is set, and also in the late 1st century CE, when it is thought that much of the New Testament and the Gospels were written. So let's dive in and look at some of the gods and goddesses which the Romans adopted from foreign lands. Number 1. Magna Mater. Magna Mater, or the Great Mother, was one of the first foreign deities to be officially introduced into Rome. Known as Cybele in her native Anatolia, she was associated with fertility, nature, and the protection of cities. During the Second Punic War, with Hannibal approaching the outskirts of Rome in 204 BCE, the Romans remembered a prophecy suggesting that they could secure victory only if her statue could be brought within the city walls. The worship of Magna Mater was both fascinating and controversial. Her priests, the Galli, were known for their ecstatic rituals, which included self-castration. This practice shocked many Romans. However, over time, her cult became more Romanized. By the reign of Emperor Claudius, Roman citizens could serve as her priests without the extreme rites. This gradual assimilation reflects how Rome balanced the preservation of tradition with the acceptance of new religious practices. Number 2. Isis. The popular Egyptian goddess, Isis, the Queen of the Nile, also found her way into Roman religious life. Initially associated with the fertility and abundance of the Nile, Isis gained popularity through trade and cultural exchanges. By the Roman imperial period, 27 BCE, her worship had spread throughout the Roman Empire. Her temples were architectural marvels, such as the Temple of Isis in the Campus Martius. Rituals dedicated to Isis often involved initiation rites, setting her apart from traditional Roman practices. Devotees shaved their heads, donned distinctive attire, and participated in ceremonies that symbolized renewal and protection. Isis's popularity peaked during the reigns of emperors like Caligula and Domitian. Her association with Egypt, a critical source of grain for Rome, added to her significance. Isis not only represented fertility, but also became a symbol of safe travel and prosperity, linking her closely to the empire's economic stability. Number 3. Mithras. Mithras, a deity of Persian origin, and formerly known as Mithra to the Persians, appealed primarily to Roman soldiers. His cult was shrouded in mystery and centered around small, secretive gatherings. Mithraic temples were often hidden in caves or basements. Over a dozen such temples have been discovered in Ostia, Italy, alone, with hundreds more in Europe, the Near East, and Africa. The Mithraic mythology revolved around themes of light and darkness, as well as the slaying of a sacred bull. These elements were depicted in vivid reliefs and paintings. Astrological symbols, including Taurus, Scorpio, and Hydra, featured prominently in Mithraic imagery. This cosmic connection added a layer of complexity to the cult. Mithras's appeal lay in his association with loyalty, bravery, and camaraderie, qualities highly valued in the military. Initiation into his cult involved a series of graded rites, emphasizing discipline and brotherhood. Though Mithras never became a state god, his influence within the army ensured his widespread veneration. Once Christianity was legitimized in Rome, Mithraists faced persecution from Christians, and the religion was subsequently suppressed and finally eradicated in the empire by the end of the 4th century CE. Number 4. Serapis. The Greco-Egyptian god Serapis is a syncretic deity derived from the worship of the Egyptian Osiris and Apis. It seems Serapis was extensively marketed in the 3rd century BC, on the instructions of Greek pharaoh Ptolemy I Soter, in an attempt to unify both the Greek and Egyptian subjects of the Ptolemaic kingdom. Whilst this plan doesn't involve the Romans themselves, it's a clear illustration of how imperialists can use syncretism to try to get subjects of an empire to conform and behave in a docile manner, in a convenient way, avoiding forcefulness and the attendant expenditure of substantial military and administrative resources. This Serapis cult continued to prosper during the Roman Empire, and statues of Serapis often replaced Osiris as the consort of Isis in temple complexes outside of Egypt. Notwithstanding his Egyptian lineage, Serapis accrued attributes from other deities, such as powers of the underworld, linked to the Greek Hades and Demeter, and benevolent characteristics derived from associations with Dionysus. The Roman cults of Isis and of Serapis grew further in popularity in the late 1st century CE, when Vespasian allegedly experienced events he attributed to their miraculous agency while he was in Alexandria, where he stayed before returning to Rome, victorious as the vanquisher of the Jewish revolt, and as the new emperor, in 70 CE. This is the same Vespasian who, as history records it, was prophesied to become Roman emperor by both the historian Josephus and the rabbi Ben Zakkai. In Rome, the cult of Serapis centered around the Isium Campensae, a sanctuary to Isis that had been built during the Second Triumvirate, in the Campus Martius district of ancient Rome. From the Flavian dynasty onwards, Serapis was also one of the deities who appeared frequently on imperial coinage together with the reigning emperor. Whilst one of the sources for the original Serapis is the Egyptian deity Apis, a bull-headed deity, the Greek Serapis is distinctly human in form. The syncretism applied by the Greeks removed his bull-like features. The Greeks, unlike the Egyptians, were not at all in favor of having their deities resemble non-human animals. In fact, in many of the surviving paintings and sculptures of Serapis, his resemblance to images of Jesus Christ is absolutely striking. Is it plausible, or probable even, that the Romans took advantage of the Hebrews' physical proximity to Egypt and their likely familiarity with Greco-Egyptian deities, to promote the idea of a Serapis-like figure in the form of Jesus Christ? Could it be that Vespasian, whom we think instrumental in creating the Jesus Christ personage, was inspired by the features, both physical and mental, of his beloved Serapis? Like many other pagan cults of its time, the cult of Serapis receded during the rule of the Christian Emperor Theodosius I, who decreed religious laws restricting paganism across his empire. The main Serapis cult at Alexandria survived until the late 4th century, when around 391 CE, a Christian mob directed by Pope Theophilus of Alexandria destroyed the Serapeum during one of the frequent religious riots in that city. Number 5. Bacchus. Bacchus is the Roman version of the Greek deity Dionysus, the god of frenzies, festivities, spiritual ecstasy, and wine. In the case of Dionysus, he is sent to the underworld by Zeus's jealous wife Hera. After that, he is saved and brought to life. Other sources suggest that he was half god, half mortal, and then later turned into a full god. Note the similarity with Jesus Christ here, who is often referred to as God in human form. And note the further similarity with traditional Christian theology in the form of the harrowing of hell, which is known as Jesus' descent into hell, or Hades. It refers to the period of time between his crucifixion and his resurrection. During this time, Jesus is said to have brought salvation to the souls held captive in Hades since the beginning of the world. The concept is based on biblical passages that hint at Jesus' descent to the underworld, most explicitly described in 1 Peter 3 verses 18 to 20. Moreover, the Roman author Hyginus writes of Dionysus on occasion giving human speech to a donkey. The alert viewer may promptly recollect 2 Peter 2 verse 16, where the Apostle Peter recalls the incident of Balaam's donkey speaking, as a reminder of God's intervention and the folly of ignoring divine guidance. Dionysus is known as a god of epiphany, and is sometimes referred to as the God who comes. We may well wonder if there are any connections with Jesus Christ in this respect. His cult is also a cult of the souls. His maenads, female followers, feed the dead through blood offerings, and he acts as a divine communicant between the living and the dead. Thus, he is often considered a dying and rising god. Dionysus was often referred to as Dionysus Eleutherius, which means a Dionysus the Liberator. The mere mention of this invokes recollections of John 8 verses 31 to 32, where Jesus will set you free. All in all, there are undeniable similarities between Jesus Christ and the Dionysus, Bacchus personages. It is quite conceivable that Roman scribes could take the characteristics of Dionysus and transpose them into a Hebraic cultural setting, in order to create the narrative about redemption through Jesus Christ's sacrifice. Number 6. Osiris. Another deity worthy of mention is Osiris. Of Egyptian origin, Osiris was the god of life, death, the flooding of the Nile, and the afterlife. He was the brother and husband of Isis. Osiris was murdered by his brother, Set, because Set wanted Osiris' title as the pharaoh. Set could not bear the fact that his wife, Nephthys, had impersonated Isis and seduced Osiris, the god Anubis being the fruit of this union. According to some versions of the story, Set also planned this assassination because he secretly coveted Isis as his new wife. In any case, Osiris was killed when Set tricked him into getting into a box, then poured lead onto the box to seal it shut, and thus trapped the unfortunate Osiris inside. Set then proceeded to take the box and drown Osiris in the Nile. However, as the story goes, Isis, the sister and wife of Osiris, eventually found a way to bring him back to life for one night. Whilst Osiris was never adopted or modified in any way by the Romans, this story bears some similarities with the resurrection and ascension of Jesus. Here, Osiris is tricked or betrayed by his brother. In the biblical version, Jesus is betrayed by Judas. Number 7. Almost the entire pantheon of Greek gods. The Romans were heavily influenced by Greek culture, including their mythology. This syncretism process involved the Romans adopting and adapting Greek gods and myths to fit their own cultural context. There are quite a few reasons why Roman gods are often seen as copies of Greek gods. A. Cultural exchange. As Rome expanded, it came into contact with Greek colonies in southern Italy and the broader Hellenistic world. The Romans admired Greek art, literature, and religion and began to incorporate these elements into their own culture. B. Political strategy. By adopting Greek gods and myths, the Romans could create a sense of unity and continuity with the conquered Greek territories. This helped to legitimize Roman rule and integrate diverse populations within the empire. C. Shared themes. Both Greek and Roman mythologies explore similar themes, such as creation, heroism, morality, and the relationship between gods and humans. This made it easier for the Romans to adopt Greek deities and adapt them to their own religious practices. D. Practicality. The Romans were pragmatic in their approach to religion. They believed that by honoring the gods of other cultures, they could ensure divine favor and protection. This led to the incorporation of many foreign deities into the Roman pantheon. For example, the Greek god Zeus became Jupiter in Roman mythology, and Hera became Juno. While the names and some attributes changed, the core characteristics and stories of these gods remained quite similar, but not identical. So there you have it. Ample evidence of the prolific syncretism as practiced by the Romans. They clearly showed a strong propensity to indulge in syncretism, a polity that was practical enough to mold religion to its own needs. Whilst the Greeks produced excellent philosophers, the Romans were bigger empire builders, and far more accomplished engineers, inventors, and in a sense, scientists. Most people know their significant achievements in making roads, aqueducts, concrete, central heating, public baths, and sewage systems. But they also created a type of newspaper, the Acta Diurna, inscribed on metal or stone, and their legal system was a sophisticated legal system that laid the foundation for modern jurisprudence. Roman law was based on principles of justice, fairness, and the rule of law. Much of this was created as early as 6 centuries prior to Christianity appearing on the scene. We hope this video has been informative and given you plenty to think about. Thanks for watching.